Valentinus's poem Summer Harvest is transmitted by the refutator, or the author of the Refutation of All Heresies, and he adds to it a probably later and independent allegorical interpretation to it. The refutator called the poem a psalm, and according to Origen of Alexandria, Valentinus wrote many psalms. And Tertullian says that a Christian called Alexander cited the Psalms of Valentinus in his writings. So we know that Valentinus wrote psalms, and many of them, and they ended up in a psalm book. Now, if Valentinus meant for his poem to be actually sung in his circle, as the term psalm would suggest, then we would infer, quite rightly, that Valentinus's group was not just a study group or a school, but a worshiping community. The poem, or psalm, is written in a particular Greek meter called dactylic tetrameter with mouse tail endings. This meter was used in popular drinking songs. Perhaps the meter and tune were familiar to Valentinus's audience. I'll first read the poem in Greek so that you can get a sense for its cadence. Greek poems were not based on rhyme schemes, but on the length of syllables per line. Panda kremamana panumati blepo, panda dokumana panumati nao, sarkamen exukis kremamenin, sukin de aeros exekamenin. Aere de ex ethris cremamenon, ec de vithu carpus fermenus, ec mitras de brephas feramenon. The poem resembles the parallelism of the Psalms, a synthetic parallelism that builds a chain of ideas. Ideas are repeated and reinforced by the use of different words, but different words add to and fill out the meaning. Here is my translation. Summer harvest. Everything by spirit I see suspended. Everything by spirit I sense conveyed. Flesh suspended from soul. Soul hanging on air. Air suspended from ether. From the death are born fruits. From the womb is born a baby. In this poem, Valentinus sees and senses all things. The word for see, vlepo, is common. The word for sense could be translated understand. It is the verb nao, related to nous. It means to understand with a higher consciousness. Normally, it signifies a deeper mode of perception than simple seeing, but what Valentinus sees and senses is apparently the same reality from two different perspectives. Everything in the universe depends or hangs on spirit and is borne up or supported by spirit. Spirit supports reality from above and below. The key point is that spirit is the foundation of reality. The word for spirit is pneuma, which can also mean breath or wind. Both Stoics and Christians also viewed pneuma as the bright and subtle, refined substance of God. It can be used in a way more or less equivalent to the Platonic nous. And so when that occurs, spirit no longer is viewed as material. Now, Valentinus sees all things, including all material things, dependent on the energy and reality of God. Alternatively, we could understand the phrase by spirit as qualifying how Valentinus sees and knows with his consciousness. In this case, Valentinus would only claim to see everything, or the universe, in a divine or higher sense. Valentinus would therefore claim to be a visionary, which of course he was. According to fragment 7, he had a vision of the Logos in the form of a baby who appears at the end of this poem. Now, Plato said that human beings are plants suspended or rooted from heaven above. Spiritual growth and nourishment comes from above. In the gospel of truth, fruit comes forth from a root which grows from above. Spiritual people send their thought to where their root is, and their root carries them up to the heights of the Father. People listen to their root or fundamental nature, and they follow it. The idea of all things suspended and conveyed by spirit is very close to what we find in the Corpus Hermeticum 3, a sacred tale, and a mini creation story. According to it, we learn that all things were in a state of suspension, anacremasthendon, and that they were conveyed by pneuma, pneumati archista. Now, these are the exact words that Valentinus used in his poem. Also in Corpus Hermeticum 3, the circumference of heaven is said to be conveyed by divine spirit, pneumati theo acumenon, in its circular course. And in his psalm, Valentinus does not mention the circumference of heaven, but he does mention the aether, that pure fire of the heavens, more refined than air. And Valentinus specifically observes that air is suspended from aether. The best Hermetic parallel here is from the Poimandres, where air, or aer in Greek, travels as far as the heavenly fire and is suspended, kramao, from pneuma, which must designate the fiery, more refined upper air. And in fact, later it's said that pneuma is taken from aether in the Poimandres 17. In the Hermetic literature, God is seen through matter. And Valentinus, for his part, connects matter to divine spirit. If flesh depends on soul, and soul on air, and air on aether, and everything on divine spirit, the divine energy pervades our cosmos continually. And the working of divine energy is illustrated by the mysterious production of crops from mere dirt, and babies born from wombs. The idea of chain linking earthly to heavenly things is the core idea of Valentinus's poem, and it's an idea that's found in many other places as well. When Heraclitus the grammarian explains the meaning of Zeus binding Hera with an unbreakable golden chain in the Iliad, Heraclitus uses an allegory to discern the deeper meaning. Hera sounds like the Greek word for air, so that is what she usually represents. Gold, says Heraclitus, is the color of the space connecting the air and the aether. And so Heraclitus concludes that the harmony of the universe is secured by unbreakable bonds. Another close parallel comes from the Hermetica at the end of Corpus Hermeticum 5, where we read that, quote, the finest part of matter is air, the finest part of air is soul, the finest part of soul is nous, and the finest part of nous is God. There's a similar chain in Corpus Hermeticum 11:4. Here God is in the nous is in soul, and soul is in matter. Everything is connected from highest to lowest, just as in Valentinus's poem, and from lowest to highest. Now, Valentinus didn't speak of nous, perhaps because he preferred to use more biblical language, but matter is analogous to the flesh mentioned in the poem, and nous is analogous to spirit. The refutator, in fact, identifies the flesh in the poem with matter. The fruits emerging from the depth need not be taken in the later sense of aeons emerging from the Father. Of course, a later Valentinian could take it in that sense, but this is not necessarily the meaning of Valentinus himself. To be sure, there could be a double meaning, or a meaning meant for higher and lower initiates. The lower world, which produces fruits from soil, imitates the higher world, in which eternal fruits are produced from the Father. There can be an understanding of the hymn, in short, for non-initiates, and a deeper meaning recognized by the initiates. If the psalm was sung by initiates in a church movement, presumably they would have intuited, doubtless by spirit, Valentinus's deeper meaning. The womb could, of course, be taken to refer to wisdom, but it need not be. In fact, if the baby at the end of the poem represents the logos, as in fragment 7, then wisdom is probably not the womb. In later Valentinian theology, wisdom becomes the mother of the lower creator, not the son or logos of the true God. Who then is the womb of the logos? It would be the father. The father can be a mother too. The father can have a womb. God, that is, can be depicted with male and female imagery, not because God is hermaphrodite per se, but because God sums up the energies of both genders so that he generates all reality from himself. Again, we find similar notions in the Hermetica. In the Hermetic Prayer of Thanksgiving, the Coptic version, God is depicted both with a penis and a womb, which is to say that he has all of the energies required to give birth. Now, the focus of our poem as a whole is on the chain of reality. All of reality is infused with divine energy because it comes from God and depends on God. All realities on earth and in heaven are connected. The chain is a chain of dependence. Flesh needs soul to live, soul depends on air, air depends on the bright, hot air of the upper atmosphere. But the last two lines adjust the meaning of the chain metaphor. It's not just a metaphor of dependence, but of source. All things depend on spirit because spirit is the source of all, just as soil is the source of fruit and the womb is the source of the baby. If this is a myth of creation, we could rewrite it such that the spirit bore ether, ether bore air, air bore soul, soul bore body. This is the flowering of reality, and it's not seen as a story of devolution or decay. Flesh is a natural part of the world. It's not hated or despised. At the same time, flesh is still devalued in the sense that it is inferior to spirit. It is the lowest link on the cosmic chain. Soul bore body both in the sense that it supports the body and that it gave birth to it and is the source of body. Presumably, if one could shed the body and then the soul and then air and ether, one could become pure and deathless spirit. There's no strong reason to think that soul designates the creator or that air designates wisdom, as the refutator says. These are all later allegorical readings of the psalm. Why did Valentinus call his psalm summer, specifically in the sense of summer harvest? Well, at the end of it, he mentions fruits coming forth from the depth, and the primal fruit is the baby from the womb. But these images don't explain the idea of summer. Perhaps it's best to reach forward in time here and to cite a Valentinian parallel. According to the Gospel of Philip 52, those who sow in winter reap in summer. The winter is our world. The summer is the other aeon or realm. Let us sow in the world that we may reap in the summer. In short, summer is a biblical image representing the final harvest of humanity. It indicates the final consummation of the world, when the seeds planted invisibly in the beginning are harvested as fruits. The fruit of the Father is the Logos, and in a sense, the Logos matures in human beings who bear fruit in their thoughts and actions. That's why the fruits can be many, though the Logos is one. To close, I underscore two fundamental points. First, the world in this poem is not evil. And second, there's no creator and thus no evil creator mentioned. Like every Platonist, Valentinus prioritized a hidden and unseen world over our material world. The hidden world of spirit was not separate or divorced from our world. It is the basis and source for our cosmos. Speculation about the creator was apparently not important for Valentinus, at least in this hymn. The cosmos seems naturally ordered without the need for a creator. The world runs perfectly fine on its own. It's not evil, so that even if Valentinus spoke of a creator, that creator would presumably not be evil either. I conclude that there's nothing distinctly Gnostic about this psalm. despite the fact that it reveals a special gnosis or knowledge. And that knowledge is knowledge not so special to Valentinus, but something proclaimed equally by Hermetus and others, that the world, our world, is enchanted because it's chain linked, supported, and undergirded by divine or more divine energies. The fundamental energy or essence of our cosmos is divine spirit. And we still don't know, nor can we ever know fully, the essence of the spirit itself.